So when you start implementing these skills, you start to remember everything, right? So from that point on, I thought, wow, this is unbelievable stuff. Why weren't we taught this at school, right? So I started teaching other people because I never learnt it. And for 20 years on, that's what I'm still doing. So it's amazing. And look, Yellow Pages was one of those things that just came up. And Census contacted me. I said, look, we want you to memorize the phone book. A PR company had told them, look, we want to have this viral campaign. And this was back 11 years ago. So viral things were still quite new.
Yeah.
So I looked at their proposal. I'm like, memorize a phone book. Which idiot would do that? You know? So it turned out to be me.
Hey guys, welcome to the Fair Dinkum podcast. We got a special one for you today. We have Tansel Ali, a 4-time memory champion of Australian, and he's most well known for memorizing the Yellow Pages in just 24 days. I think that's 2,300 business names and 2,400 digits or 24,000 digits.
Yeah, about 24,000.
24,000 digits. And we also have his...
You definitely remembered that one.
24,007. And we also have his 2 books here. The Yellow Elephant, How to Improve Your Memory and Learn More Faster and Better. And my book that I'm going to take, How to Learn Almost Anything in 48 Hours.
Bro, I'm going to belt you for that book. Don't worry about that.
So if you guys want it, link will be in the description. And you can just search it up on Google. It's available on a lot of different platforms. We wanted to talk firstly just about your story and stuff like that. A lot of people don't know who you are. So maybe just like even... why would you even memorize the Yellow Pages? How'd you even get into memory? Because for us, we didn't even think it was there's such thing as a memory competition and stuff like that.
Also, touch on what Yellow Pages are if people aren't from Australia. Do they have it around the world? Or is it just Australia that has Yellow Pages?
Oh, I'm pretty sure they have different colours maybe. Who knows?
Red pages.
Pages.
But yeah, no, basically, Yellow Pages is like, it has every directory. So like, for example, it's the directory from back in the day, has every single number, business name from the Australia, all of Australia, is it?
Yep.
Oh my God.
He knows every... he had to learn all of it by heart.
In 24
And
days.
he recited it again, and he got it all correct. So
I didn't really recite it like the Quran. it was more just a basic recall. So just want to, you know.
No, we got to gas you up a little bit. We got to give you that build up, man, because that's amazing feat.
Yeah.
How many people can say they've done that? You know what I mean? So wanted to, like Ashraf was saying, please touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. I guess, look, I started off as a skeptic, so I never believed anyone can improve their memory, right? I used to watch a lot of late night TV when I was a lot younger, and I used to see these people get on stage and remember everyone's name in the audience, and I used to think these guys are all fake. You know, they're trying to sell it was cassette tapes back then. I'm not sure if you guys know what tapes are. But these are tapes.
We're not that young.
Right? So they used to, I thought, no, these guys are just marketers. So anyway... a friend of mine then came up to me and said, look, Tansel, I can remember 40 random objects back to front, whatever. I said, we like those guys on TV. He goes, yeah. And I thought, you know, I'm going to test this guy, see what happens. So I gave him a bunch of words and he memorized everything perfectly, like all 20 of them. And I didn't see him write down anything. I'm like, this is impressive. You know, what's going on? What was there a trick or anything? Because I'm still thinking there's a trick. And he goes, no, it's just memory techniques. I'm like, what are you talking about? What's this memory techniques business? And he goes, oh, it's from a book. I got it from a book, right? Techniques. I'm like, all right, what's the book? And he couldn't remember the idiot. So I'm like, oh.
After all that.
After all that. Anyway, he told me the author's name, which was Tony Buzan. So you can go check him out. Yeah. And so I went and bought one of his books and I got the wrong one. So I read it. I was like, it's still not working, dude. He goes, oh, yeah, I remembered it was Use Your Memory. So Use Your Memory was the book that I got. And I read like a chapter and no jokes, I started remembering stuff. I'm like, seriously, it can't be this easy. And it wasn't repetition because when we try and use memory, right, especially at school, we're trying to repeat, you know, all the time we're trying to repeat over and over and over again and we still forget. So this was using stories and associations and, you know, using color and all this sort of stuff. I'm like, I've never used that in my life. So when you start implementing these skills, you start to remember everything, right? So from that point on, I thought, wow, this is unbelievable stuff. Why weren't we taught this at school, right? So I started teaching other people because I never learnt it. And for 20 years on, that's what I'm still doing. So it's amazing. And look, Yellow Pages was one of those things that just came up. And Census contacted me. I said, look, we want you to memorize the phone book. A PR company had told them, look, we want to have this viral campaign. And this was back 11 years ago. So viral things were still quite new.
Yeah.
So I looked at their proposal. I'm like, memorize a phone book. Which idiot would do that? You know? So it turned out to be me. So I was just about to send him an email saying, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. But I sort of did a little bit of calculation in my head. I was like, okay, there's, about 2,300, odd business names I have to remember. And they each have about 10 to 12 digits. If I memorize that, that's 20,000 digits. I broke it down into like 30 days, which is the time they gave me. I said, okay, this is actually doable. So I thought,
That's doable.
delete the email. I said, yeah, sure, I'll give it a crack. So then it took them 6 days to send the books out. I only had 30 days, right? It took them 6 days, so I only had 24 days to memorize, right? They're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So anyway, the first day comes, I memorize, about 100 odd, 120. And next day comes and I totally forget the previous 100. I'm like, how am I going to do this? Yeah. So I had to think on my feet every single day and think, okay, what's the best strategy of memorization? And how am I actually going to do this? Because they had interviews lined up for me for TV and radio, right? So massive accountability. Like if this was just for my own time, I wouldn't have been able to do it because there's no one to be accountable for.
Yeah, there was external pressure to like keep going forward with it.
Massive pressure, yeah. It's like, I'm going to be on TV. If I forget, I'm going to look like an absolute dill, right? So I created a strategy and all I had to do was execute. And what I found out from after memorizing the phone book was that it wasn't that I had a great memory, right? It was that my time management was really poor, right? My discipline was poor. And after getting into the habit of creating something that worked, then I started realizing, oh, wow, this is what I really need to do. So once I developed the strategy, the rest was execution. But it took that whole, month of really understanding myself and understanding how, humans work to really make that achievement. So it wasn't an achievement of memory, I think. It was more an achievement of, getting the discipline right and accountability and all those things as well. So, yeah.
That 1 month changed your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It made me think of a lot of things. And like I mentioned, that self-discipline, like some days I was getting up and memorizing for an hour. Other days I wasn't doing it. And if I didn't memorize that day, I had to double the next day because of the ones that I missed out on.
Yeah. Wow.
So there were some days I was doing 10 hours a day of memorization. And once I did it, I'm like, I'm not going back there, man.
Yeah.
And I was doing it in 2-hour chunks, not 10 hours all in one go. But it's very, very challenging.
So these 2-hour chunks of you, trying to memorize, are these like specific techniques you're doing or is it just repetition? What was it?
It's specific techniques. So the techniques are essentially using visualization and association. So for example, right, if I had to remember Bob's Plumbing, right, that was
What's their phone number?
Bob's Plumbing.
Joking. Yeah.
Right? Let's say the phone number was like 9782 blah, 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 whatever.
Yeah.
What I had to do is I had to actually come up with an image for Bob, right? So I can imagine a guy bobbing up and down continuously. Right? Maybe he had the plumber's crack, Bob's Plumbing, right? So I imagine that really deeply. Then what I had to do is I had to connect the numbers to that image, right? Via what's called association. So what we have as memory experts is we have numbers converted to images. So 97 would be a bike, right? And 17 might be a dog. This is something we pre-memorized. So, for example, 97 comes along and all I imagine is a bike, someone riding a bike and throwing it and, the wheel landing right in between the plumber's crack or something like that, right? So that's...
So you got to think of... is this like thinking of abnormal stories? Because it seems like you're only thinking of like crazy stories that
they have to look. The crazier they are, the easier it is to remember as well. And all it is just connecting one thing to another. So 17 is a dog. So now the cycle's gone right into the plumber's crack. Now a dog just climbs on top of it, and you can just build a story up. So all you're really doing is when you go back to remember the story, you go, oh, Bob's Plumbing. Oh, what was Bob doing? I was bobbing up and down. Cycle came. Oh yeah, that was 97. Then the dog climbed on 17, and you keep going. Right? So
but it's even tough memorizing what 17 is, what 16 is, what 54 is.
That's another ball game altogether, and we've done it as part of our memory training. So that's another thing that I help people with is that you need to, just like physical training, right? People go to the gym, people exercise, but people don't know how to exercise their brain, right? Part of memory training is this number system. The more you train that, the more you practice, what's called encoding. So training your brain to create something from nothing, and the more you do that, the faster you get at processing. So you're able to now remember a lot quicker. You're able to learn a lot faster. and you're
Wow.
able to make decisions better. So there's a lot of cool stuff like that can be done.
Is repetition, because I know like us, maybe growing up, a lot of things we try to learn, like even learning languages, it's through repetition. Is that like a effective way to memorize, or?
Not really, not
Okay.
really, because that's how I learnt as well, through repetition. And what you do is you go and repeat, you write down some notes, you repeat, and you still forget. So it's like saying to someone in your brain, right? Your brain has holding spots, but if you're repeating, doesn't have a holding spot, doesn't have a location. So it just gets stuck in there, right? Somewhere. And then when you try to retrieve it, it's like, where are you? Whereas I have to go back and repeat now to try and get that in. So what you need to do is you need to create holding spots, like folders on a computer, right? You don't have to try and remember all these little files are on your computer because you know where that main folder is, right? So if you create folders in your head, then all you have to do is just put the information in there and then forget about it. And the next time you go, oh, can you tell me about this book, or what was this, phrase in this language? And you go, okay, let me just go to the folder. Oh yeah,
It will come back to you. Yeah.
it was this. So you need to create that system.
So go
sorry.
ahead. Go ahead.
I was gonna ask you, so like for yourself, and what would you recommend others when it comes to like creating those folders? Like, how do you do that? Because I'm completely tripping out. I have no clue. I'm like,
I can't search my brain for any memory.
If
You
you
know
can
what I
create a brain as a computer, that's amazing.
Can we do something like an activity for you guys
Yeah, well,
and for your listeners as well? Because I think this will be really cool if we can get something interactive and create the folders in our head right now.
let's go.
Oh, that's
Is
it.
that-
Yeah,
Is
that's
that cool?
it.
All right, awesome. So here we go, right? I'm going to do a little memory test first. Right, I'm going to
Okay.
do a little memory test. So
Memory
you guys
test.
wanted to test me, but I got you back. Right?
Pressure's on. Yeah.
Pressure's on. I'm going to have a little memory test, okay, and see how many you can remember. Okay, I'm just going to give you some words.
All right.
How's that sound?
Let's go.
All right, and people listening and watching, you can take part. All right, first word, I'm going to have fun. Second word is shoe. Next word is tree, door, beehive, sticks, heaven, gate, fine, and pen. All right, now before I get into that, because in your head you could be like cat, dog, tree, car, computer, whatever, blah, blah, blah.
That was very quick. as well.
It's. I don't want to confuse you guys,
Mm.
right? Because you could be listening to me, you could be repeating those things. It's not good, right? So how our brain works is that you need to create those folders, as I was saying before, right? So are you trying to remember those words at the
Yeah,
moment?
as you're
Yeah.
talking.
Yeah.
I was still trying to remember it.
Still gonna know.
Yeah.
Come back.
Still trying to remember table and chair and
fun
I don't think there was table and chair.
So anyway, so what's happening now is that your brain's getting confused. It's like, okay, I'm trying to remember these, but get the conversation going as well. What's going on? And I'm doing all the talking. So if you were to ask me a question now about this, what sort of question can you ask me?
What were the 10 words?
Okay, you
Oh,
can go straight to the
Yeah,
words.
yeah,
eh?
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go through the words. Now, here's what I'm going to do, right? I'm going to give you a random number, and you have to try and tell me the word that was corresponding to the order of that number.
Okay.
All right?
So
and
do
we'll
you
make
mean-
it a competition between you guys.
You mean the next word? After
No,
or
it's that
exactly?
word
Okay,
for
yeah.
that number.
All right.
All right? So I want you to give me the fourth word.
B.
No. All right, seventh word.
Gate.
Heaven.
Yeah, good one.
Heaven.
I guess
Second
that.
word. I take it back then. The second word.
Shoe.
Yeah, well, good one. Sixth word.
Beehive.
Yeah.
No. 10th word.
I've got no idea.
I completely blocked out.
I got none
People
of
at this point usually go, how many words were there?
Yeah.
All right, first word.
Fun.
Fun, yeah.
Yeah, good one. Fifth word.
That's
Milk.
beehive.
Beehive.
Yeah, beehive.
Okay.
Ninth word.
I clocked out at 7.
Yeah, same.
I clocked that at
As
5.
soon as you
All
think
right.
about the first three.
Eighth word.
After
Surely.
heaven.
Eighth, no.
Shoe?
And no.
Was it
Number
gate?
the third one.
Tree.
Yeah, it was gate.
Gate.
Yeah.
Heaven,
Yeah.
gate, and then I was off.
And the third one.
Tree.
Tree.
I just remember the first three. Like,
All right, so you
vividly.
guys went pretty terrible. It's fair to say.
Straight to the
So let's go through the answers, right? 1, fun. 2, shoe. 3, tree. 4, door. 5, beehive. 6, sticks. 7, heaven. 8, gate. 9, fine. 10, pen.
They all rhyme.
So there's something going on here, right?
Yeah.
What did you discover? What did you discover?
It's all rhyming. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so all the numbers are rhyming with the
Yeah.
words.
There's a rhythm, yeah.
Yeah. So I do
Because he didn't say one, he just said fun. He didn't make it rhyme. So in our head, we didn't create a connection.
I heard
Yeah.
there was a kind of rhythm when you were talking about, you go fun, shoe, tree, and then I'm like, there's a rhythm because you go tree, and then you said what was the fourth one? Door. See, I was like, there's some
Beehive,
sort of
yeah.
like they kind of rhyme, but I didn't know that it was like one
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
So
Imagine
this
it easy
is
with me now.
yeah, it's a memory technique, and it's called number rhyme technique, right? Creatively named. So what you can do with this, right, is you can use it to create folders in your head. So if you go out and try and remember something, you can actually use this as a technique. So for example, let's say we go shopping, right? I want to get 10 things, right? The first item, let's say it's milk. What you do is you create a story with milk and fun. So maybe you're playing with milk, you're having lots of fun. All these kids playing with milk, they're just laughing their heads off, right? All you have to do is make a silly story, right? For me, that might be silly. For other people, it might be awesome, right? So anyway, number 2, what was that rhyming with?
Shoe.
Shoe. So let's say shoe and cereal. What story can you give me with shoe and cereal?
Eating cereal out of a shoe.
Yeah, cereal out of your shoe. As you do, you might have nice black bits floating around. And, you know, what sort of odor are you getting from your shoe in particular?
He's doing the shoeys.
Drink it out.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So eating out of your cereal out of your shoe, that's good. And what cereal, by the way? What particular cereal?
Go Cheerios. I reckon
I was
that's a
thinking
shoe flavour.
Cheerios. What? Get out of my head.
Cheerios? What are you saying?
Say crunchy nut.
Crunchy nut. Okay.
Last bloke.
Good one. All right. So the third one, what was that?
Tree.
Tree.
Tree,
Let's
yeah.
say tree and onions. What story can you guys make?
Onions are growing out of the tree.
No, they
Yeah.
don't do that, man.
What?
They grow out the ground.
But it's
so growing
abnormal.
out of the onions. Yeah, that's a good point. So
Yeah, but remember, it's in your mind, so
I'm
you
just
can
trying to
make
say
the
something-
onions grow
Yeah.
out of the tree.
I'm
You-
just
you
saying
can do
something
that.
random.
That's
It
good.
doesn't have to like work.
yeah, no, I know.
So the thing is, your
That's
brain
like-
goes, it questions, you go, hang on, onions don't grow on trees. Why is it going to be on a tree? And as soon as it starts doing that, you've got it. So imagine all these onions. You've got a beautiful onion tree out the back. You know, there's hundreds of people climbing this tree. They're all crying just to get to the onions. And, you know, Tony Abbott's on the base eating all the onions.
Totally have it. Is he wearing a speedo?
Not that this is a halal show, by the way.
Don't imagine that. Thank you
Next
very
one. So number 4, that was rhyming with what?
Door.
Door. So let's say door and Vegemite. What could you do there?
much. Door and Vegemite. Say that the door couldn't open because the Vegemite was blocking it.
Yeah. Yeah. Or maybe you smeared Vegemite all over the door.
Yeah.
You know, you
On
can
the
just,
handle.
again, silly. Yeah, on the handle. So imagine, how does it feel when you have Vegemite on your fingers?
Not good.
For those that don't know, just go and buy a bar, Vegemite. I was going to say bar of Vegemite. You can edit that part out. Go and buy a jar of Vegemite and just stick your fingers in. So next one, number 5,
Beehive.
Beehive, yeah.
beehive. So let's say beehive and cucumber.
Or try to retrieve the cucumber from behind the beehive.
Yeah, nice.
And then you get stung by the bees.
Yeah, not nice.
Stick the cucumber in the beehive and then
That's
some
it.
honey.
Yeah, you connect it. Yeah, good stuff.
I didn't say anything. That's your dirty mind.
Doesn't
not
like
mine.
Number
So-
6,
Sticks.
sticks. So sticks and let's say tomatoes.
Sticks and tomatoes.
You put tomatoes on a stick and then you put it on the fire.
Nice.
Then instead of marshmallows, you're eating tomatoes.
Yeah, why not? Let's do it. Number 7.
Heaven.
Heaven, yeah.
So heaven and let's say lettuce.
This would be heavenly lettuce.
Yeah, you enjoyed it that much, did you?
Yeah.
Very crisp. I'm a fritologist.
You can
just
just,
to let
you,
you
can
know.
just you can picture it's raining lettuce.
Raining lettuce, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good
Cloudy
one.
with the chance of meatballs when it's raining food. Like all this
Oh.
lettuce is falling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
lettuce eye. What's it called?
Lettuce eye.
All right, number 8.
Gate.
So gate and let's say cheese.
The person who was standing at the gate had very cheesy jokes.
Very cheesy jokes.
Well, the
nice.
gate is made out of cheese.
Yeah.
And there's rats behind it trying to enter. And you have to fight them off.
Bro, I'll belt
Wow,
right,
this guy's
bro.
creative.
this is getting into creativity territory now.
Yeah.
That's good. Number 9.
Fine.
No,
So fine, and let's say chicken.
that tasted good. That chicken was pretty fine.
I was thinking the same thing.
These guys are not creative.
Well, do you want something absurd? I
Yeah.
can do
I
that.
reckon I'll go.
The chicken crossed the road. Yeah, and then after he finished crossing the road, tell you all right. He said, "Yeah, no, I'm pretty fine."
That's a good one. I like
So
that.
that's
Stick with that.
that should be the trailer for this episode. Right?
Can you imagine that? They're probably
That's-
thinking, "Oh, it's psychedelics or something."
On DMT. So all right, number 10.
Pen.
So pen and let's say apple.
Pen, pineapple, apple.
I bet you were thinking the same thing. Weren't you?
Nah, actually was that. I have no idea. Say it again.
Yeah, pen, pineapple, apple, pen. You know that guy?
No idea. What
I
that
have a pen. I have an apple.
we gotta put that in the edit.
So all these have watched that
No
movie.
idea.
You know what I'm talking about, Tansel?
Of course.
See, he knows.
Sorry.
So I just picture an Indonesian guy with glasses holding a pen and an apple, and then he puts them into. There you go.
Done.
That's my
Done.
creativity.
As soon as we watch it.
That's it. All right. So 10 silly stories, right? Let's go and try and recall this. I'm going to do it random. Now, why random? Because we have to go into different spots in our brain. Because usually when we try and remember and, repeat, we're repeating in order, right? And we can get some sort of a pattern when things are random. And most of the time, things are random, right? You might get a phone call here, an email there, people talking to you. That's how life is. So if we can remember in random, it's much more practical for us, right? So here we go. So I'm going to say the 7th word. So what was that rhyming with? Do you remember?
Heaven.
And what was the word?
Lettuce.
All right,
Mm.
let's have a
Lettuce.
comp. Whoever could say it the fastest, all right? Number 4.
Door. So that was a Vegemite in the door.
Jeez.
Nice.
Nice.
So yeah,
I didn't know I could do that.
And you know in your head you picture the door, yeah? And you picture your
I
hand.
was like Vegemite. Yeah, I was like bar of Vegemite.
All right, next one, the number 2.
Shoe. So Cheerios in the shoe.
Yeah, or
Cereal.
crunchy nut.
Crunchy nut. Yeah. All right, number 6.
Sticks. So there's
Six.
Tomato.
tomato.
Nice.
Because it was lame. Yeah.
Number 10.
That's
The
pen, pineapple, apple,
Yeah.
pen.
Apple, yeah.
I was gonna say pineapple.
Number 1.
Fun.
Fun.
Milk.
Yeah. Good one. Number 8.
Gate. Cheese.
Cheesy gate.
Yeah. Number 9.
Fine.
The
Chicken.
chicken crossing the road. Chicken. He's a good bloke, that guy.
Yeah, fine, mate.
Fine, yeah.
Number 3.
Tree, onion tree.
Yes.
Yeah, crying. And Tanya, but in speedos.
Cool. Was that? I think that was all of it. Yeah. We
I
went
think
through
so.
all. Yeah.
Was
Yeah.
it? Wow.
No,
that was
I
quick.
think he's,
So
I
how'd
think he's
that feel?
testing us. I don't.
There's more.
Yeah, there's more. 5 beehive, the cucumber.
Yes. My story.
That was disgusting.
So how did that feel? Going through that.
Too easy,
Bro,
honestly.
well,
Yeah.
he stuck to my head. I didn't even know I could do that. This sounds like an ad. This is not an ad. I'm being serious.
If you want to work with Tansel, go on his website.
Yeah, it's amazing. That's what got me into it because I realized, hang on, it can't be this easy, surely. If you could do 10 like you did now, you could do 10,000. It's exactly the same thing. Obviously, the only difference is time.
And
Right, so,
numbers.
Yeah, I was gonna say commitment. Yeah.
so you can do that, and it's funny because once you start knowing these techniques, imagine applying for studies. Now you're not just repeating stuff; you're actually enjoying your studies. You're having fun. You're having a laugh with the content, right? You're making it engaging and memorable. Like who doesn't want that? And time is relative, as you know. So if you're studying and it's repetition, time goes really slow and boring.
Yeah.
But if you're enjoying yourself and applying these techniques, an hour of study time is just going to go like that, as opposed to taking a very long time.
So how would you make it entertaining? Because, for example, me, I never studied a lot for exams. I was more like the night before kind of studier or the morning before the exam. So how would you, also I want to know, do you even remember what you studied the night before or not really? Just some repetition kind of.
Yeah, look, repetition. Look, we get really good at it because we've been doing it for such a long time. But compared to memory techniques, it's night and day. Like what you can do once you have memory techniques, you can use skills like the memory strategies, like we talked about. There's memory palace, method of loci, linking, association. Major system, which is a number system, mind mapping, speed reading, even. These are all memory techniques. And once you start combining these together, you don't have to go last minute and scramble. You don't have to do that. You do it during the learning and a little bit afterwards, and that's it. You've got it in your head. Then when the exam comes, you don't have to do 8 hours of study or 4 hours of cramming. You just do that 30 minutes of revision and you're done. Now, I've done this with so many people, professional people taking professional exams, and they've passed them. I even had, a couple of years ago, I had one guy come to me for the world's most difficult exam, and he's been trying to pass it for 7 years.
Sorry, what's the exam?
It was like a wine tasting exam,
Oh, wow.
and it's the hardest. There's even a Netflix documentary on it, right? So it's really difficult. And this guy passed it within 1 month of working together. He memorized his all notes, and it was all different languages as well.
That's crazy.
I say, remember with you telling me this morning about your maths, because that's studying for school and stuff like that.
Oh, so yeah.
He forgot.
I forgot. This is why I brought you
Good
on.
memory.
I remember doing some memory techniques with you when I was younger. So Salia, my older sister as well. And I can't remember that much. That's why I brought you back on to fix my memory. But so there was working on the times tables. So like working in the teens, and all I remember was like my dad testing me. So it's like 12 times 18, 17 times 19. And then all of a sudden it takes like a good 5 seconds and I remember it. So like, do you know how this technique? Do you remember it?
Yeah, oh, I can't
Just
believe
so
you remember that. That was, good, that was
yeah.
good stuff. Yeah,
Beehive.
it's well, you know the funny thing that you mentioned, you can actually use the number rhyme technique to memorize timetables, right? So let's say 7 times 7, 49, right? You go heaven and heaven. Well, if you get heaven and heaven together, what happens, right? It opens up a door, right? So you can say door, and what's 9? Fine. Opens up a door, and it's really fine. Or you can create some sort of a silly story, right?
Oh.
So you can do
See,
that.
now that we're thinking about numbers as well.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what happens then is kids start looking at creating stories rather than just learning it for the sake of learning, right? Uses their imagination and creativity. So the technique that we did was pretty awesome because it's hard to, I'm not a maths, I failed maths like 4 times at uni. This was before I got into, memory techniques, but technique was that, let's say you're doing 15 times 15. Right, you do 15 plus 5, right? So you go 20, you times it by 10, you go like 200, and then you do 5 times 5 underneath, 25. So the answer to 225. So you can do things like that. It's really cool, and there's hacks and tips everywhere out there. It's just about searching and
It
finding.
also makes it a bit more fun though for the kids, because if you're always learning the same way, it kind of gets a bit boring because it's the same thing every day. But then if each class is learned in a bit of a different way, it uses your brain and, it's for growth. So I reckon kids would love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to ask how you would tackle, for example, because I'm doing a marketing degree now, and there's a lot of valuable knowledge I want to retain, and I don't want to just memorize it or whatever. Would you still suggest these memory techniques for that sort of stuff?
Yeah, well, the whole idea for memory is not just to retain, but to learn from it, right? Now, unfortunately, with memory techniques, you can pretty much pop them in folders and not learn anything, right?
Yeah.
It's just that, putting in, in a filing cabinet or a spot. So what I suggest people do, especially students as well, is learn techniques like speed reading and mind mapping, because mind mapping is amazing, because what you can do is you can get a whole book, map it out. It takes like 30 minutes or so, mind map the whole thing. And then what you do is you go through each branch, it's called, and that way you can visualize and understand what that particular topic is. Now, what's the difference between that and taking regular notes? Well, with regular notes, if you're taking notes, something's on page 4, then something might connect from page 4 to page 12, right? Something on page 6 might connect to something on page 18. You haven't got a direct line of sight to that connection, whereas a mind map gives you that direct line of sight. So you're quicker to get to that information. And then what you can do with that is it helps you to understand where everything fits from that knowledge rather than everything being random.
Is that even with reading books? Because, for example, there's times where I read a book and I remember so much. Like, I'll tell you this. I'll tell you, if you say, give me some takeaways from the book, I'll say 20. Then there's a book I read, 400 pages. I can't tell you one thing from it. So would it be the same kind of things where I should maybe do a mind map before I start reading the book? And what else should I do? Speed reading? I've never really got into speed reading.
Yeah, what is it? Just
Speed reading is essentially it's encoding. So what it is you're not just reading really, really quickly. You're seeing images from the words. That's what it is, right? We're always talking about images and visualization. So, for example, when we look at numbers or words that don't have any sense, they don't make anything, right? There's no meaning to it. So, soon as we see the numbers, and if we connect, say, see the number 23, you say, okay, that's, Michael Jordan, or that's whatever, blah, blah, blah. You get a meaning. But if there's 5 or 6 numbers, it doesn't make any sense, right? Same thing with a whole bunch of words. It doesn't make any sense until you get an image in your head, right? But with words, you might take a few seconds. Now, what happens when you read is that you're reading. The image hasn't come to your head, but you still keep moving forward and reading. So what happens after a period of time is you go, hang on, what was that again? You go back and reread, right? You go back and reread to try and fill that image. So what speed reading does, it shows you some techniques on how to read in images, in groups of images, so that when you're reading in images, you can start to visualize what you're reading and understand the context and the content a lot better. So speed reading improves your comprehension, right? If you're just looking at words, then you're not really getting anything.
Does that
in your
work for
brain.
non-fiction as well?
Well, non-fiction has a lot of words that makes a visual, doesn't it? So it'll even make it better for you if you're reading non-fiction.
So we should kind of, when we're reading, not just read the words, but kind of visualize it, make the like a story in our head whenever we learn something?
You don't have to make the story because the story is already given, right? The actual content. So, for example, if it says something like, I'll take something really boring, right? This contract must be signed by such and such a date. It's just a generic statement. So what you can do is say, okay, contract, how can I visualize the contract? Maybe it's an old parchment paper. Maybe it's written in fountain pen. You know, if it's written in April, it's during Easter time or whatever. So that's how you can start to do things. So the other example is, well, when you're watching TV, right, you don't try and memorize every single word, do you? Or the dialogue. You just kick back and watch it, right? Why? Because that is already encoded information, right? The words in a book is not encoded. So that's why it's difficult for people to read. Right, I used to find it difficult to read. I hardly ever read books. Then once I got into speed reading, I read my whole bookshelf in one day. Like it was only two books. It was only two books.
Okay,
But
I was
I
like,
read
whoa.
in one day. You know, so now I can pop out 3-4 books in a week quite easily because of these skills.
So you're a
Right.
big reader?
Yeah. I mean, look, it's a big thing to try and gain knowledge, and and that we're in the knowledge business anyway. So it's my job to essentially impart all this stuff and keep myself learning as well.
Is there any books you might recommend? Just if anything comes to mind, like, okay.
Besides these two.
Yeah, the Yellow Elephant, that's got a lot of the memory techniques in there, and it's got a whole speed reading course in there. So
Okay.
whoever wants to learn more about speed reading and the techniques, that's the one. The other book, How to Learn Anything, is essentially how to use these techniques to apply to learning. Right, so how do you learn a language? How do you learn lists and things like that? Scores and musical instruments. Stuff like that. So so two very different
good
books.
Language is an interesting one because Ashraf and I did live overseas for about a year learning Arabic. Obviously, we did just the general curriculum by learning languages. But are there techniques that will actually fasten that learning?
Absolutely. Yeah. What I recommend is usually when you learn a language, right, and you would have gone through this, is you get a workbook, you have grammar, you have the rules, all these beautiful things about the language. You try and build context, but you don't actually end up speaking it, right? So majority of the people, they don't just want to study a language, they want to speak it. So if you could essentially memorize the phrases of any language, right? X amount, say 1,500 phrases. I know it's a lot, but if you put in the time and effort, you'll get there. If you can memorize that many, you can speak probably 80% of the language, right? Now, how do we learn a language as kids? Our parents don't give us a manual and say, oh, there's a comma here and you have to put an exclamation mark there. They don't do that. They just speak to us in the language, right? So I work with PwC and Melbourne University for a whole year to create a language learning program. And essentially what we did was looked at how do we learn as kids, right? Like I said, and all we did was use memory techniques to memorize phrases, and that was it. So this was applied for Chinese Mandarin, but it turned out you could put any other language in there, and
that's
work.
a very difficult language as well.
Not really, no. I found Japanese a lot more difficult.
Okay.
Mandarin was quite easy. In fact, I ended up
Interesting.
teaching it.
Oh,
as
wow.
well. So it was quite fun.
So you've used these language techniques to learn a language yourself or memory?
Yeah,
test it out.
absolutely. Because it's fun, it's exciting. Once you start getting into this area, oh wow, what can I do? I went back and did 2 master's degrees because I was so excited to use my skills.
Wow.
Well, how
It
many
was exciting.
How many languages do you know now?
A few.
He's gonna say a few.
So
yeah.
what's some techniques? Because I think a lot of our audience want to learn languages. Like Ali and I want to improve our Arabic. So how probably the same. We're interested in learning languages. What's some of the techniques? Because obviously we'll read the book, but then if you just give a
Brief.
Teaser.
I'll give you an example of how to memorize a phrase, because if you can do this, you can pretty much memorize a whole bunch of phrases to learn languages. So I'm not saying it's the only way. It's just one way that I found, right? What you can do, I'll give you a Mandarin example, right? Since we're talking about Chinese Mandarin. So you would have heard ni hao ma, right? It means like, hi, how's it going type of thing. Not in an Australian sense, but exactly, but you know what I mean, right?
You're doing a burger.
So what we're doing now is we have to convert those abstract words into images, right? So ni, so we got ni, how, so we could say how, or ow, we could say ow, probably more dramatic, someone hit you, ow, and ma, as in mother, or something like that, right? So now imagine you hitting your knee on the table, right? You go, ow, and your mum comes in, and instead of saying what happened, you guys, how are you? You know, and the brain goes, hang on, why would she say how are you when you've hit your knee? Right? And that's just to connect the whole thing together.
What it means, yeah.
Yeah, so next time you go, okay, how do you say how are you in Chinese? Oh, how are you, ma? Bin? It's almost like you're working backwards. I hit my knee on the table. Oh, knee. Oh, ma.
Okay.
Right?
That's interesting, yeah. Because we didn't know any memory techniques when we were learning. And we had zero knowledge on Arabic, like really. We knew how to maybe read a bit and write, but speaking, there was no like knowledge there on how to do it and no techniques. So a lot of the ways we did it was repetition or just translating it in our head. So a lot of time we'll think of the word and then just from English and then translate it into Arabic or something like that. So it'd be interesting to kind of come from a different perspective like that.
And also, one of the quickest ways I think we learn new words in that was watching, like, let's just say a TV show, especially like a kids one, because it's all visual. It's different to like maybe just a regular adult show. It's like abnormal in our head. So it's like those little things I feel like made the difference compared to even just like writing English and Arabic versions of the word. They'll just go out of our head.
It's repetition, because you said recall. It's not about remembering, it's about having the ability to recall. So we'd do a list every day of 10 words and the next day 10 words. But then by day 4, you forget what was on day 1.
Yeah.
Because you have to use the words.
There's a thing called spaced repetition. And what that means is that after a period of time, you're going to forget, right? So you have to go back and review it, right? There's the thing called the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. And Hermann Ebbinghaus was a guy he did some tests back in 1885 on memory, right? German psychologist. And he found that after a period of learning and memorization, we start to forget, right? So what you have to do is after, say, 2 hours of learning something, go back and review it, right? And then 24 hours later, go back and review it. A week later, go and review it. 2 weeks later, 4 weeks later. So it sort of doubles. So by the time you get into the weeks, you've pretty much got it in your head for longer term. So this is if you want to retain something for long term.
Okay. Because that's what, like, for example, I know you have a blog and you did, I think, a course about memorizing Quran. And then it's about that. Like sometimes a language you might want to do or a presentation you want to practice for that time, but then Quran might be something you want to do long term. I think you had a story about memorizing Surah Yasin and then each ayah was like a different location. Can you tell us a bit about that? So then we know we can incorporate not just into things in English, but things in other languages that we might not even understand.
Surah Yasin was that was an interesting one because the ayahs are just long enough, right? So the difficulty people have with memorizing Quran is essentially how the next bit starts, right? That's it. So you've got one bit, right? And then you go to the start of the next, what was it? So you get stuck there. So the trick is to memorize the start of each ayah, right? So, Surah Yasin has like 83, ayahs. So you go bang, 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 memorize each start. And then all you have to do is try and recall them and the rest of the ayah comes along, right? And the way to put them in, almost like the technique that we had with number rhyme, right? But there's another technique called the memory palace or method of loci the ancient Greeks used to use. And they used to memorize on a familiar path. So, for example, the first thing that they might associate to is, let's say it's a table. And then you have, carpet, then you might have couch, and you go along a set path. And then all you do is you connect what's to be memorized onto those locations. Right? So the locations, you can have more than 10. You can have 20, 30, 50, 100, right? As long as you know the order of them. And I keep my order in a spreadsheet, if I don't know them off by heart. So that's fine. So you can look at the order of them and all you have to do is make the stories with those locations, go back and review them. And that's how you memorize it.
Wow.
Interesting.
I want to talk about also the procrastination place. That is a place that I dwell in consistently. And to be honest with you, I feel like I have a citizenship there. I'm probably gonna be there.
I heard you got knighted.
I'm not. I got an MBE, bro. But I want to touch on it a little bit, and I want to know whether or not you believe it's because of overstimulation, or if it's basically just because of I don't know if it's a coping mechanism because things are getting too hard or something like that, or is it all variant?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Never thought of it as a coping mechanism. But look, I see it as, again, it forms like part of memory, right? What memory is stories, right? We looked at that before, stories and associations. Now, when we have stories in our head, if we're procrastinating, we're thinking of other things, right? We might be thinking of, I'm going to delay this because I'm going to, I can't be bothered working on this right now. It's too hard. And you have this really difficult story in your head about being too hard. So it's like, okay, I'll just open another browser or I'll just check my phone, right? To cope with that or get distracted away from it, right? So the story's in your head. Now, with memory training, what you can do is you can change these stories, right? So if you're procrastinating about something, right? Let's say, can I ask you, what do you procrastinate about? What is it? One of the things you can give me as an example.
When it comes to like uni studies, so if I have to like watch a lecture or review chapters, like I'll always procrastinate and I'll go, let me just do something else for now, and then maybe I'll come back, but I'll never ever get back to it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So it's about identifying the story that's in your head at the moment, right? What stories do you have in your mind when that's going on? When you're just about to do the studies, but you put it off.
I feel like I'm too tired, or I tell myself that, you worked in the morning, so you're distracted.
Yeah.
And then when you come to do it, you're not going to really get anything in your head.
Yeah. It's funny how we try and justify
You think
the
of
procrastination.
You think of like excuses for a better time to start it.
Have you heard of productive procrastination? Where you do other things, like clean your room, vacuum, like do the laundry, do the bathroom, do the chores, like other stuff, because it's still productive, but it's not doing the number one thing you have to do, which might be study. So you think you're being productive, but you're actually just procrastinating against the thing you have to do.
Yeah.
So sometimes we do that for uni.
Yeah, it's essentially getting into the mindset and understanding, okay, if you say it's too hard or, I've got to, try and justify another time, it's like, okay, how do you change that story?
Yeah.
So remember, it's a story that's playing out in your head, right? And if you train your memory, it's like physical training. If you train physically, then now you're able to run faster, lift more, all of that. If you can train your mind to make better stories, now you can get rid of that story and maybe create something else. Like, wow, if I get to this now, then later on I might have more free time or be able to do this and that. So you make that exciting, right? So your new story has to be way more powerful than the procrastination story.
Okay.
Right? That's really hard to do because if you're skilled and mastered the art of procrastination, that means your stories are quite good. So you have to create and train in a way that's going to outdo this one. And it's doable. Yes, it is hard, but like anything, it takes a bit of effort. And once you get there, you're going to be smashing out your task like no tomorrow.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I know when you develop the mental strength, it's kind of easy. It's like going to the gym. The first couple of weeks, it's the hardest thing to go. And then you're going to go through that stage, should I not? But it eventually becomes such a habit that you just go without thinking. Your brain's not even telling you, I don't want to go. You just go.
Yeah, and you can also do something like habit stacking as well. Like one of my difficulties was reading. I think I mentioned to you. So what I did was I used to always walk, right? I'm like, I enjoy walking, so I might as well read, like listen to an audiobook and read. Okay. So I would, not read.
Reading on the
go. Audiobook and read. Now the cool thing is, because I've done speed reading, I can listen to an audiobook in like triple the speed, right? No. So you put on triple speed and you walk for an hour. Right, so now you've finished off essentially a 7-hour book in 2 days because you're walking once, twice a day.
Yeah.
Right, hence that's why I said finish off 2, 3, 4 books in a week because of you've connected 2 items together that needs to be done. Awesome thing. Now it doesn't have to be for everything because sometimes you might want to go for a walk just to clear your mind, and that's a good thing as well. But if you want to stack 2 things together because you're putting one thing off, that's another good way of doing it as well.
On that topic of overstimulation.
You said Oma as well.
Did you both say that?
For all the Omas out there, we do apologize.
You're the lowest bloke Oma, man.
Overstimulation, like we all use our phones, and sometimes like unfortunately we're on social media and we waste 20, 30 an hour and we're like, I don't even remember anything we're on. I mean, they said like brain dead activities. Does using social media, overstimulation, always having your phone and technology and watching TV like that actually affect our memory?
Look, it's a good question because everyone asks it, right? And especially in this day and age where we do have access to these computer devices, it's amazing. It's a yes and no, right? Depends how you're using it, right? We look at the statistics and people say, look, you tend to check your phone every 7 minutes, right? And it's probably getting less and less each time now. So it's unbelievable. And what happens is that we can go on there, check the apps, and think, well, why did I just checked it a few minutes ago? Why am I checking again? Why am I scrolling through? Yeah. Right, that's not good. But if you're going on there purposefully, and you've created a podcast, you're doing your YouTube stuff, you're actually working away on it, and you've only done a couple of hours, then maybe it's not enough, right? So it really depends on how you use it. Remember, these are just tools. right? It's like saying, money's bad. Well, hang on, money can be used to buy drugs or it can be used to give to charity. It's you choose how to use the tool.
That's why you use
right?
it.
So remember, all technology, everything like that is just a tool. So we just have to get better at educating ourselves. How do we use this tool? Do we go for iPhone or Android? Well, actually, they're the same thing, right? When you think about it, are you just taking notes on your phone? Well, they both do that. Are you taking photos? They both do that. Well, why are you going, see what I mean? So some people get too intertwined into, no, I really need this because of that, or I need these high-end cameras to do YouTube. Well, you just need something to get out there, So you look at the bigger picture, and once you understand that bigger picture, the tools, they just become the vessel. You just use it.
I think also people start to make excuses for their bad memory. Like you said, you grew up and you always thought you had a bad memory. People might think, I spend too much time on social media, I watch too many TV shows, or I don't read. And when I do read, I don't remember it. It's just you make excuses and you have what they call like a fixed mindset, where you don't believe you can grow. Where like a growth mindset is like, I can learn any skill if I'm willing to put the time in. So I think like if we do have like a growth mindset, if we can fix our memory and attention span, it'll be very like beneficial. Because like you said, you can learn these techniques very easily. You should have to be willing to like do the techniques and then incorporate it in your life.
Yeah, it's like the Carol Dweck book. That's what she
mindset.
sort of gets it from. So it's look, they're just tools, but we have to understand and be educated from them, because otherwise we're going to be automatic. And a lot of these things come to us automatically, and that's what we don't want. Because if we're just doing things automatically from start of the day to the end, how have you even lived? Like when you think about it. So sometimes we need to be off a device to say, okay, wow, there's life out there. What can I do? It's amazing. And suddenly time stops still and you go, oh, wow, this is amazing. Whereas if you're just on your computer or phone or whatever, day just flies through it and it's the same repeat. What I try and do is I try and incorporate a lot of what I call breaks in between my day as well, of not doing anything. In fact, there's a Harvard study out there saying if you do 20 minutes of nothing, right, every single day, you get more productive. Yeah, boredom.
Yeah.
How about creativity?
Boredom is great, because a lot of people trying to get away from boredom.
Yeah.
As soon as we feel boredom, so we reach for the phone. Why? So it gets us away. But in reality, boredom, if you sit with boredom, it's the same as, being in the shower or in the toilet. That's when we get the best ideas. Right? So I remember there was one day where I hadn't accomplished anything all day. I was really frustrated. So I thought, I was getting bored. I'm like, no, I'm just going to sit with boredom. And no jokes, within 20 minutes, I got everything that I ever wanted. And, I got ideas to be really productive. And that day was one of the best days. It's just because I needed to sit with myself for a moment.
Yeah, it really seems like boredom doesn't exist in this day and age. But speaking about fixed mindset, Asha mentioned before, I wanted to talk about like imagination and creativity, using your techniques of creating these abnormal stories. Some people do have this fixed mindset of like, oh, I'm not that creative. I can't really think of these stories. Like if you look at the number 17, like you said before, I can't think of anything. I just see a number. How do you develop that with maybe some of the clients you maybe had in the past?
It's just techniques. Like once you know a technique, then it's like you can't unsee it. You can't unknow it. Right? You can't just forget the technique. It's there for good. Like you now know this number rhyme tech. You know it exists, right? You can't not know it now. You might forget bits of it later on, but you still know that it exists, right? So it's the same thing here. You just have to be empowered by education. And once you've got it, you say, oh, wow, what can I do? That's why I went back and did 2 master's degrees, because I had all these skills. I was like, oh, wow, I'm more excited about education now. I'm not excited about just passing, because that's what my undergrad was. It's like you just pass, get your degree, get a job. Right? But now it's like going back, because I can actually enjoy my education. I can actually enjoy the studies and actually learn, right? So it's much more powerful that way. But yeah, education is really the key there.
Even what do you think was the most interesting thing you tested yourself on with memorizing? Was it like the first time you did a deck of cards, the yellow pages, a language, because obviously you've probably done so many things we didn't even know you've done. So like, was there one thing that stood out, like that was a really good experience?
Oh yeah, look, number rhyme was the big one for me, because I only memorized like a few, and it freaked me out. I'm like, oh wow, this is amazing, it works. And memorizing a deck of cards. I mean, that was insane, because I never thought I'd be able to do it, and lucky because I started with a friend. and we're doing it together, and we're text messaging each other, and he was saying, look, I could do it in, 19 minutes, and then I was like 17 minutes, it was like 16 minutes, I was like 15, and then one day he pulls out 6 minutes, I'm like, what? So we competed against each other, and it was fantastic. But that moment in time where I first memorized a deck, it was quite special, because it's a really hard thing to do when you first get into memory.
So what do you mean by memorizing a deck of cards? Like, is it like, each suite and whatever it is, or did you like shuffle the thing and then?
Yeah, so you shuffle the cards and they're all random, and then you go one by one and memorize it, and you turn it over, and then you essentially turn the cards over and say, yeah, that was 7 of spades, that was 2 of diamonds, blah blah blah, all in the order that you memorized it in. Yeah.
We gotta learn that.
I'd never heard of like these memory techniques until have you read Deep Work by Cal Newport?
Yeah, I'm featured in it.
I know.
Well.
Yeah, that stood out to me,
Cal Newport,
my friend's reading that right now. He's actually this other editor, but he was not here. So, but he spoke about memorizing a deck of cards, and he spoke about the story. Like he said, like you walk into a room and there's different objects, and each object is a card. And then when he said that, and I started like thinking about a deck of cards, I'm like, the amount of creativity and imagination you can kind of like, it's like a muscle. You kind of just keep working on it, and it's like subhanAllah.
That was my student Daniel, by the way. So he came to me and he said, I've got a lot of organizational problems at school and blah, blah, blah. And we worked together, and he did amazingly well, and he's got a lot of TED Talks out, and he's been, in books and stuff. So it's fantastic to see, people jumping on these techniques and, just being empowered by them, which is why, you hear stories like that. It's like, you want to go out and spread the message more. So I've just been fortunate. I've been doing it for 20 odd years now, and it's just, you never cease to amaze how people just to really grow and learn from these.
So do you think that in order for, not saying that this will be the sole reason, but in order for like blockages to no longer occur, that we need to develop these techniques? Like, for example, for me, I have aspirations of doing certain things in my life, whether it be owning my own clothing brand or whatever it is. Do you think that it will be a valuable asset for me to gain? Along those lines, you know what I mean? Not just for study and all that.
Yeah, look, absolutely, because what it's going to do, it's going to help you, like I said, with creation of these stories, helps you become more creative, get more ideas, and it also gives you a better mindset, puts you into growth mindset, because now you're thinking of possibilities. Fixed is fixed. It's just there. It's static. So whenever you're training your memory, the best thing that I've learned with memory training is not by remembering everything, but by the stuff that I've forgotten, right? And the reason why I say that is I look at what I've forgotten in, say, competition or, whenever I've gone to memorize something, and say, okay, I forgot this. Why did I forget it? It's because I didn't attach that. I didn't do this, didn't do that. So I've learned so much through my mistakes. And, that's what memory techniques gave me. It gave me the ability to be confident through making mistakes and through failure. Right. So yes, it's just, one thing you can learn, add to your, I guess, skill set to, do what you want to be able to do. But, in terms of getting your mind right, the training really helps. It's like physical training will get you, physically fit, but mentally no one knows what to do. So using these skills will give you so many other benefits that you probably won't even notice until you've started really training them.
That's amazing. We'll get there going, bro.
Yeah.
I have to genuinely have to.
I know. I'm interested now, because like training your mind, because we always prioritize health, even spiritual and like emotional health, stuff like that. But when do we actually train our brain to retain more information or learn or test ourselves like we're learning a new language? Because learning a new language is also, it's a very difficult thing to do, even for your ego, because you actually go back to when you're 1, 2, or 3. Like you are saying, "How are you wrong?" You're saying, "What's your age wrong?" You're making mistakes. Like you're counting 1, 2, 4, 5. Imagine that you're skipping 3.
Yeah.
Imagine someone's learning English. You just start laughing at them. A lot of times, Ali and I would say something. People would actually laugh at us and won't reply to us. It hurts your ego. It hurts like your nafs, stuff like that. It's a big test, but it's good for your brain to kind of like create more neural pathways and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And the more you train, the easier it gets as well. It's not like it just suddenly gets harder, right? Because the more and more you practice, the brain's building those neural networks, and the pathway gets stronger and stronger in the brain.
What do you reckon about unlimited potential mentally? Do you believe that's a thing?
I mean, what do you want unlimited potential for?
Because we're watching like, for example, like Lucy or you watch these type of shows, and they always say that we only unlocked, I don't know, what was it, 10% or something like that of the brain's capability. Do you believe that it's necessary or possible to even get past whatever's?
Look, to be honest, I don't really care about that stuff. What I really care about is what can I do in my current state, right? I'm not interested in people living, in their best possible self or 100% of the time. I'm interested in what can you do when you're at 30%, right? What skills do you have so that if you're feeling really down or you're struggling in a certain area, that the skill and knowledge is going to help you get past what you need to get past. That's what I'm interested in, because always looking at, being limitless potential, all of that stuff is great. But in reality, stuff happens, right? So you might as well plan for a lot of that and build the skills up so that you can be proactive as well. So that's what I really believe in as well.
And also it kind of teaches you to focus on what you have right now. Because you're making, like, for example, you're 10% and making every percent count instead of thinking, why can't I be at 80 or 90? It's like your 10% might be able to change your community, your family, your life.
I have a lot of struggles with concentration as well, or awareness, like just being present in the moment and whatever. Do you reckon breathing techniques help, or do you have any other suggestions?
Oh, look, I found memory training helped immensely with concentration, because what you're doing is you're stretching out, I won't say stretching out your brain, but you're stretching out the process that it takes you to think in an excruciating level, right? And the more you work at that, it's like, what's that? Exposure therapy, right? So you're exposing your brain to high temperatures of concentration, so to speak. So the more you do that, the better you're going to get at it. And look, in memory competitions, right, what I used to do is we used to enter in Australia, memorize like 10 minutes. Half an hour was the longest that we had to memorize. And that was a lot. Like we would barely do it by the end of it. But the world competitions, you'd have events that go for 1 hour. Whoa. So I'm sitting there memorizing numbers for 1 hour.
That's intense.
And it's crazy. Like after 20 minutes, you're gone. It's like, can't do it, but you got to stick to it. So in order to train for it, got to train for way longer than that, way longer than 1 hour, 2 hours, so your brain gets used to it. So memory training really helps with concentration, as well as, mindfulness is really powerful as well. Like, one of my clients, I keep bringing this example up as well. He went to eat out and he got like a really expensive steak, and he's, chowing down the steak really fast, bang, 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 bang. And gets halfway, goes, hang on, paid a lot of money for this steak. I'm going to enjoy it now. So he spends the rest of the time just eating slowly and being mindful of it. So it's sort of like that in a way. It's like if we're just going through things really fast, of course, we're not going to be concentrated because we're worried about the next thing. Yeah. Right? But if we're just in the moment, right, sometimes that's all it takes, because now you can just purely focus on that one thing. And use your visualization skills or being in the moment, breathing, everything to bring you down and experience just that moment alone. And that's real power right there, because not a lot of people can actually do that because they're worried about checking their phone, it's 6 minutes later or something else, or that they've got other stories in their head, right? But if you can minimize those stories and just have that moment, again, that's gold.
Because I was linking it back to like khushu' in salah, for example. So like khushu' just means concentration in prayer. So like for us, we always think about the next thing, we're always thinking about what am I doing after prayer. That's the thing that usually distracts us the most,
Yeah.
So
you got to fall in love with the process, right? This is what, again, sporting terms, they talk about it, all of that, right? So never worry about the end goal. That's what I look at. So you never worry about the goal. Just worry about the process. Worry about enjoying doing the hard thing that you need to do. Right?
Yeah.
So if you love that process, the end will take care of itself.
That's true. So would you say with like there's a known like statement with, kids are able to absorb more information, like they're like a sponge, like learning language, for example. It's a lot easier for them to learn a new language compared to grown adults. Is it as simple as just them being more mindful, more just present?
Not really, no.
Multiple aspects? Is it actually a thing, or is it a myth?
I won't say it's a myth. It's more because adults have greater capacity to learn, because we can learn from experience, we can create context, we can do all that sort of stuff. Kids have amazing imagination, so that's what they're using. Remember, the difference between the number rhyme and the other test before was what? Storytelling imagination. Kids do that more often. as adults, we start to move away from that. You know, we write in one color, you know,
Yeah.
at school, and now computers. I mean, we do have things called fonts, right, to try and make things memorable. But you don't go around changing font. Like, who does that these days? You know? So you see what I mean? So it's more adults are conditioned to think a certain way, whereas kids haven't developed that time yet. So they're still raw and they're learning. So that's why they're like sponges.
Is it also like a thing of subconscious memory? Like, I know, for example, sometimes you'll be at work or at the shopping center and you just have the radio on, or you're in your car, you have the radio on, and you learn songs or Quran or something, just, and you're not even conscious of it. Is that also with kids, where they just subconsciously might pick up a language quicker because they just,
Yeah,
how
look,
that
you
work?
can learn a lot that way as well, because subconsciously, it's way more powerful than our conscious mind. You know, I haven't delved in deeper. Like, there's experiments people have done at university as well, where the lecturer's given, you know, problems to students. They say, okay, I want you to read this problem before you go to bed, and then try and come up with the answer in the morning. So they sleep on it, wake up in the morning, and throughout their dreams or whatever, they come up with the answer. So, you
I
know,
heard sleeping on it is one of the best things to do when you have a problem. Yeah, subconscious
I
mind
mean,
can solve that.
look, I don't do any of that because I love the conscious activity of it. But, you know, there are stuff like this that works as well. But just hearing things, and remember, that's when you listen to recitations, that's like a mixture of words and emotions, like sounds, and that's using both sides of the brain as well, right? When we were making those stories before, we got words and we connected it with images. Right? Again, both sides of the brain. If you're just looking at words alone, that's just using a left side, right? So that's what I mean.
I know exactly what you mean.
You got to connect those sides of the brain in order to make the most of it.
Because I was struggling for the longest time to learn a surah al-Mulk, and it's like an important surah for all Muslims. And for me, when I listened to a certain recitation, I realized that the thing that I got from it was the flow. So, for example, like Tabarak alladhi biyadihi, you hear it in your head, yeah, but sometimes I couldn't put the ayat into the positions, and then the actual rhythm of the guy's voice was in my head, and then you can hear that while you're reciting it, and then now you remember that this part he goes like this, and then this part he goes lower, and then so I think you're right.
If there was no recitation, people would find it way more difficult to memorize the Quran. Because recitation helps, the tone and everything. You're right.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I wanted to also know about nutrition. How does nutrition play a part in memory? Because I know some people say, like, this is brain food, or some of the garbage a lot of us eat. Does that affect our memory?
Yeah, look, I'm sure it does. It's an area that I haven't delved into personally. I'm just dealing the practical elements of memory. But I mean, it's almost common sense. Like, yeah, eat good food, your brain's going to be better. Eat crap, it's going to be worse,
Okay.
right? So that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. That's what I believe in anyway. Look, I mean, I've shown good memory, even though at one stage I wasn't eating great. But that's not the whole idea. The whole idea is to be a better human, look after yourself. And, you know, I know people that don't even know any memory techniques, but through looking after themselves physically, they're confident, their abilities, you know, grown. They've got an amazing memory, you know. So just taking care of yourself is fundamental.
I want to ask, what is one of Tansel Ali's I don't know, let's say routine when you forget something, for example. So, like, I forget questions. I forgot a couple questions just within this podcast alone, you know? So what kind of techniques do you have that kind of help you recover what you were thinking about?
I don't know what you're talking about there.
He doesn't forget anything.
What's that word for?
Imagine you're in an argument with your wife and she goes, "You said this." Like, no, I didn't. Who's going to win? Australian memory champion or?
That's a good point.
Yeah,
She always
well,
wins.
you guys aren't married, obviously, so you know.
Obviously.
So you always have to concede defeat in marriage. So yeah, that's something you guys should know.
So I can't forget a password anymore.
No, but getting back to your question, look, we are human. We forget, right? I have to be mindful of actually using the techniques, because if I don't, I'll forget as well. So if I do forget, on the rare instance, I mean, I can't remember a time I've actually forgotten. But if I did forget, then I'll be like, okay, how can I remember it better for next time? Like, what can I do? What's a stronger trigger, right? So I'll look at that. And like I said, I learned a lot from actually training my memory, right? Because by making a ton of mistakes, that's how I've learned. I haven't got to the success or just by being successful. I've got there because I made so many. Like, it took me 6 years just to try and win a memory competition in Australia. I kept coming second, and 1 year I came last because I was going for all these records. But what happened was that, for example, one of the events, you had to memorize numbers, right, in 5 minutes, and the numbers will be in rows of 40 digits, right? Now, if you make one mistake in the row of 40 digits, you don't get 39 out of 40. You get 20 out of 40. 2 mistakes and you get 0, right? Now, we're memorizing in pairs of digits. So if we make one mistake, we're gone. Now, I was essentially memorizing twice as much as everyone else in the competitions, but because I was making a mistake here and there, I was getting, pretty much close to 0, right? So that's what was happening. So we're taught to learn from mistakes. And that's what happened. After 6 years of learning from mistakes, I changed a few things around and changed the mindset, changed, strategy. And that's what happened. So if I do make mistakes now, I'm fairly good at changing and, bettering my situation for next time.
It's amazing.
It shows that there's secrets and techniques and stuff, but it still takes sacrifice, hard work, and discipline. You still got to put in the hours. It's not like you learn a technique and you're going to memorize the whole Quran in a day. It takes time. It takes effort. Yeah.
I think that's what people are afraid of, though, because anyone can do these techniques. Absolutely anyone can learn them, but not many people would take advantage of them for their own, what they want to achieve, because it takes sacrifice, hard work, all those things. And people want answers now. They want things now. It's like, well, you got to work your ass off, buddy.
Society.
It's also self-awareness as well. Like when you do make that mistake of like not being able to memorize those numbers, it's like, okay, what did I do this time, or what didn't I do so I can do it for the next time?
Yeah, it's just, just try and remember, if those things happen, okay, that happened, acknowledge it. Okay, great. How can I improve it? It's that mindset. Mindset is everything. If you just, get down with it and go, okay, I'm just feeling bad. Nah, crap memory. I'm not going to do it ever again. You're missing out on a whole opportunity of things. And a lot of people do that. They might attempt something. They might go horse riding. Go, oh, no, I've done it once. No good at it. Well, you've only done it once, on a particular horse. You might try other things and you might enjoy it this time. So that's why I always say to people, just go out and try things, because you never know what you can get out of it. And that's what memory was for me. It was just a trying thing. I mean, before that I did acting. Before that I used to play guitar in a band, and all these other things. So I used to do a ton of things, and that sort of led me to, where I am now. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Shows that sometimes people think you have to have a passion. When you're 18 in high school, finishing, it's like, you don't know your passion yet, you're late. But it's like, if you try new things, you might actually find something you enjoy, a skill set, a talent, or just like you and your friend were competitive, so it kind of like pushed you to enjoy the process more. And then now look, an entire industry, profession came out of it.
Yeah, I had no idea, because like I said, I was a skeptic and now I'm feeding a family from it. It's unbelievable. I never thought I'd be here. But again, I wouldn't say it's a passion. I don't have a passion for it. I just like doing it. Right. And I'm not, you might say, oh, yeah, it's similar, whatever. But passion is something deep down. You don't have to have a passion. You just go out and do stuff. Right? Like Gary Vee says, just go and do it. Don't care about what other people think. And that's what, unfortunately, a lot of people, we talked about this before, think about what other people might think of them. Right. Don't worry about that. Just go and do it and enjoy the process of it, because that's the real, that's where the gold comes out, from that process, from the journey. Not the destination. Like, you'll get there anyway.
Jeez, he's dropping gems. None do that. It's motivational too.
But, you can do it.
But I also wanted to touch on the sport aspect of this, because I know you've worked with the AFL and you've worked with a couple of athletes as well besides the AFL. How does memory training help them? Like, besides learning plays, or for example, all that other stuff?
Yeah, again, just like physical training, they go to training the football players and they do little drills, right? They don't actually practice the full game, right? They play a full game once, but throughout the week, they're not practicing full game. They're not doing 2 hours here, 2 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours. They're practicing little drills and stuff. So you could do the same thing with the mind as well, where you're not memorizing a book or memorizing a whole bunch of numbers, but you're doing little drills here and there to improve concentration, to improve your stamina, to improve mindset, to improve creativity. All these little things you can create a schedule around. And that's what I do with a lot of my clients, is create almost like a fitness schedule, but for the mind. And the more you train, the more you can actually start to do and see results as well. Like, I'm working with this 62-year-old lady, and she was pretty much almost like a skeptic. when she started not long ago. And within just 2-3 sessions, she's like, oh my God, I can't believe, I'm starting to remember this and I'm becoming more playful with my grandkids and, all these things are happening. I'm like, we haven't even started training yet. And now you're seeing these things happen.
Yeah.
So, it's just about getting in there and trying it.
Sorry, Cody.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask, see how you spoke about the old lady remembering those sort of things. Old lady, sorry. There's no disrespect.
She's very young.
Yeah, the young lady, sorry. Can we unlock memories from deeper in our childhood, for example? Is that possible, or is that just like something that is not really like necessary?
Yeah. Look, one of my clients actually asked this question. I was going to make a separate video on it, which I will on my channel.
Oh, okay. Don't forget to subscribe. We're going to put
Please subscribe
below,
in the link. Yeah. But look, I think you can. Again, I think this is what sort of like hypnotherapists and people do, because they use the power of the visual mind to get into certain times in your life. Right. So just like how we memorize, create visual stories, you can go back to an actual visual story as well. So I'm not an expert at it. I don't know. But from what I do know is you can use this capability of the visualization to take you back. Like, for example, if you were to say, if I was to take you back when you're 6 years old, right? I remember you, for example, you were 6 years old, you were on our couch, lying on the couch, you'd fallen asleep. Right? I remember, who's this little kid? I thought it was 3 years old. But anyway, you're quite small for a 6-year-old. So I remember picking you up almost with one arm because you're so light, taking you to the car. Now, if I was to go back to that point, it's like, okay, I remember that, right? That's the story I remember. But okay, let's see. What was the couch like? Was it green or grey? What was on my right? Was there a little kitchen table? And as soon as you get deeper and deeper, you could start to unlock and unravel things as well. So it gets really powerful. Yeah. Sorry, I'd had to bring up that.
No, it doesn't matter. It's good that you have those memories there.
Everyone has stories about him. Everyone has stories about him being a little kid.
Always look younger than my age, yeah?
Yeah. Mashallah, he's grown so much, so as everyone does.
He still looks 16, though. We'll carry on.
You're not 16?
No, that's very good. If people did want to do one-on-one coaching or learn from you, where can they do that?
Look, I recommend, it depends on what they want, right? I always recommend people to, check out online, type in memory techniques, look at things that they want to learn, like, memorizing numbers, or it could be memorizing names, things like that. My YouTube channel, I try and put as much resources as I can in there and answer people's questions, so they can go there, they can jump on my website or my social media platforms. But really, there's so much information out there. I mean, there's books, there's online courses. So, it just depends on what people want. But yeah, look, I'm more than happy to talk to people.
And you're able to be found at just Tansel Ali on all social media platforms and YouTube?
Yeah.
We'll link it all anyway down below. Everything will be in the bio, inshallah.
Yeah.
But too easy, man. Well, it was actually a pleasure. Like, I already know what comes after 1, number 4, number 5. I know there's doors and there's cucumbers and everything.
What's number 6?
Number 6 was sticks. You put it on the tomato. See, I'm not, bro. I know what I'm doing.
The marshmallow type.
You know what I mean? But yeah. Also, I just wanted to test you real quick. What was my name?
What was your name? Sahel.
He's good, Tansel. He's the real deal, boys.
You know how I memorized it?
Here we go.
So I said, okay, Sahel. So
Fail.
He's a failure.
They having su in Turkish means water, right? So water, you're drinking water, but it's hailing on you. At the same time, hail.
So you get all in, but you're having all of the states. So you have liquid, you have solid. Is there any gas involved? The steam coming
hopefully
out
not.
Tell him your surname.
Legit.
No?
I used to work with a guy named Vijay Aranganamachandran, right? And it's like, okay, how do I remember this guy's name? So I thought, okay, Vijay, he was a DJ, right? Vijay Arangan, a orangutan jumped on him, right? He was at a DJ at a nightclub, right? Orangutan jumps on him. Rama, there was caused all this drama, right, at the nightclub. And then people started chundering after like Chandran. So chundering after that. So Vijay Arangan, Ramachandran.
Wow.
I don't know how you remembered that. I would have given up. No, but
Oh, I had a bit of time to think because
Like,
his email signature was very long.
like it's
Yeah.
But you can break up. So if you want to remember the name, you can break up the name and create stories like that, which is great.
amazing.
Yeah,
Interesting. A lot of people probably like call you out if you ever forget their name or anything like that.
I do it on purpose. Some people say, "Oh, do you remember me?" I was like, "No, are you important?" They go, "What?" I love it. They get frustrated.
You remembered your name. That's a good
Nah,
sign.
bro, it's on it, bro. Wallah.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate it. Well, we appreciate having you on, Tansel. We're gonna have more content with Tansel, inshallah, and also look out for his channel because there's too much. I'm telling you this. I'm unlocking things I didn't expect to unlock,
Yeah.
to be honest with you, and inshallah we can all benefit. Thank you very much for coming on, Tansel.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys.
Legend.
Much appreciated. And if you guys want the books, it's all in the bio.
Like
Remember
and
to-
subscribe.
Yeah.